Hey yo, what is up guys? Official stats are out for the new tier 8 premium tank destroyer from the Italian line. This is the Vipera SMV CC-64. This is a tier 8 premium tank destroyer from Italy that looks more like a heavy tank than a tank destroyer. And we're gonna take a look at the stats that has been released so far. Very slow is my first impression. It's gonna play more like a heavy tank, but I don't know if the armor is going to hold up like a very good heavy tank. So let's check it out. The hit points 1400, 600 horsepower. The weight is 51 tons. The power to weight ratio only 11.74. This makes it like a really slow heavy tank. In fact, it makes it look like a super heavy tank, you know, like the VK or something like that. I mean, this tank does look really nice, I got to say. It looks different. It looks like a hybrid of a tank destroyer and a heavy tank. Of course, this has a swiveling turret, a rotatable turret, but it only rotates 45 degrees to each side. This is the extent how far it can rotate to one side. So this is what it looks like, 45 degrees to the right. And if you flip that around 45 degrees to the left, you can expect the gun to be pointing just over the front left wheel here. And that's about the extent how far it can rotate that turret. Yeah, so 36 kilometers an hour going forward, 12 in reverse. And with that very low power to weight ratio, you can expect that that speed to get to that 36 kilometers an hour to be pretty slow. Again, 45 degrees to the right, 45 degrees to the left. This is what it looked like, 45 degrees pointing to the right, and this is what it looks like, 45 degrees pointing to the left. I mean, if you're going to poke out of cover, I suppose 45 degrees is just about enough for you to engage your enemies. Don't need much more than 45 degrees, but if you do need to look more than 45 degrees to your left or right, you do have to rotate your hull as well as your turret in order to get that kind of coverage that's going to be more than 45 degrees. But there you go, very low profile looking tank, it looks like it, and it does look interesting. I would be interested to see what's going to happen with this tank. We'll talk a little bit about the armor. The hull armor on this tank is 210 frontally. On the side it's 100 millimeters. The turret itself 275 millimeters frontally, and this looks almost flat, and this is what's worrying. 275 is a lot of armor on the frontal turret, but if you think about it, a lot of tanks have more than 275 millimeters of penetration, especially if you are you know, firing premium shells. So I don't suspect the armor is going to hold up very much, especially on flat land. It will be interesting if it's on you know, when it's hull down, when you're poking over some terrain. That's because this tank does have 10 degrees of gun depression and 20 degrees of gun elevation. So if you are shooting you know, from a hill, from any kind of hull down, you know, overlooking a slope or a bit of terrain, you would get a little bit more angle here, and then it'll be a little bit more difficult to penetrate that because 275 millimeters of sloped armor plus you know, if you have 10 degrees of gun depression, you know, maybe you're looking at 300 plus millimeters of turret armor. So that could be something you could look forward to. But yeah, this is already in Supertest, and it is going to be available for super testers. They have changed a little bit of the stats since the early information that was out. This is an autoloader with 5 shell magazine. It was slated to have a intra clip of 8 seconds, but they've already buffed that to 6 seconds. So 6 seconds intra clip, 5 shells in the clip, and 6 second intra clip with 0.42 dispersion. So I suppose you can get the dispersion down to about 0.38, 0.37 if you're running food, if you have BIA. You know, still not very accurate gun, but the dispersion about 0.38, 0.37. If you have all the goodies working out for you, the aim time is 2.6 seconds with 10 degrees of gun depression. So that is very interesting. We'll see how it's going to work out. I suspect that this tank is going to play more like a heavy tank. You're going to play more like a heavy tank support tank. You're going to be hanging out with the heavy tanks. You're going to be looking for places where you can get hull down, where you can use your 10 degrees of gun depression. So you're looking for, you know, little hills, you know, places where you can poke over and get some gun depression working for you, and work that armor. Remember, you do have 210 millimeters of hull armor and 275 millimeters of turret armor. So if you can get a, you know, if you can work your gun depression, if you can get your 10 degrees of gun depression, you can increase that slope on your armor and maybe bounce some stuff if you're lucky. But we'll see what's going to happen with this tank. In my opinion, I don't think 210 hull armor and 275 millimeters of turret armor is a big deal. That's because if you look at the armor profile here, it is very flat. It is not incredibly sloped. It's very flat. So you basically it's you know, 210 hull armor here. If you can manage more than 210 penetration with your shell, which a lot of tanks, you know, even with standard shells, I'm sure you can penetrate that armor. And if you hit the 2 key with your premium shells, 275, more than 275 millimeters of penetration, easily penetrate that turret. That is my observation. 400 millimeters of 400 damage on the standard shells and premium shells, 515 with your HE shells, and the penetration is 220 with your standard shells. That's not a lot of penetration for a tank destroyer, in my opinion, because tank destroyers nowadays have a lot more penetration than 220. And healthy amount of penetration, 264 penetration on your premium shells, which I suspect is going to be heat, but let's check it out. 264 penetration is APCR shells, standard shells. I think this is AP shells. So yeah, that's what I have for you today with the Tier 8 Vipera Tier 8 tank destroyer from the Italian line. Let's see what's gonna happen when it releases, and I get to test it out, and we'll check out what's gonna happen with this tank. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.